All right, welcome everybody to the Fantasy Thinker channel, and this is Short Fiction Side Hustle number 6, and we are today doing the third story in Reave, the Just Another Tales by Stephen Donaldson, and this story is called The Killing Stroke, and it is more like a novella, really. It's in length, but read very quickly and nicely, I thought. With me today, I have my great friends Chris from the Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel, and of course the awesome Varsha from Reading by the Rainy Mountain. And you can also find us on the podcast Speculations and quite a few other things as well. So we are here today to talk about The Killing Stroke by Stephen Donaldson. And so I would like to get your overall impressions, guys. Chris, what do you think?
I absolutely loved it. L, capital L, capital O, capital B, capital E, capital D. Loves it. It was a story that got better and better with each page, as well as it sort of the mythos of it kind of grew as we got some more detail, and even had like reveals and stuff in it that again sort of suited the fact that it was sort of novella length, because it sort of had a payoff for having um that longer page count than we would normally be used to. But yeah, definitely used that well.
Okay, cool. And Varsha?
Sorry. Yeah. I loved the story too. I thought it was quite brilliant, and some of the things that it brought up for discussion, like the two things that I could really get behind were I forget their names. I'm sorry, I'm not good at remembering names, but the person, like, do we have a name for our main narrator?
Yes. She says it a few times, and I don't remember what it
Yeah.
is either.
Isla
No.
is the female.
Isla?
Right.
Yep.
Isla
Yeah.
is the female, and the male is
That's a good question.
got a name.
She does say it, though. I remember that.
Yes, she does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Asper.
Asper.
Asper. Right.
Asper. Yeah.
So Asper, he he talks about how we shouldn't be making assumptions, like that we don't have enough information to decide one way or the other, that all these people flocking to either black or white, or making assumptions about just black being evil just because of all the connotations with it. I thought that was great, and how that built up and made his thinking valid too. uh and the other thing I liked was all of the martial arts, the discussion of their various forms and philosophies, but I especially liked the main one that denied the existence of the killing stroke, because it's focused so much on defensive technique, and just not bringing a fight to someone, right? And yeah, I think I just love the themes around that in the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that too. And this story was this was the first publication of this story, because
Mm,
some of the other stories in here were published in magazines previously, what have you, but not this one. This one was actually written for this collection specifically, which came out in '98, and um, I read this when the paperback came out in '99.
mm,
So I read this over 25 years ago, and so it was interesting for me to come back to it now, and with this different perspective I have on life, of course. And because back then I thought it a really cool story, but I remembered, for some reason, I remembered it differently than what I actually got now. And um, I thought there was like more. I thought there was like sword play and more
Right.
of that kind of fighting going on, and I thought there was more one-on-one matches, and there was actually only one match
mm.
in the whole thing. And now that I'm reading it, I'm like, wow, it's just funny what memory does
Yeah.
as time goes on, you know. So I really actually just enjoyed it even more this time because I'm starting to see a lot of the more subtle things that Donaldson was doing with this type of story, and I really enjoyed that a lot.
It has a way of taking martial arts as being, whether it's defensive or offensive in terms of how you're going to use it, but how the physical is married with the spiritual in
Mm,
reality, and how each of these people were sort of born in this different sect that they believed absolute, but actually when put to the test, that's when the discovery and that's where the introspection and the reflection and all of that kind of comes from, and it became kind of more fluid towards the end. And I really loved that kind of, rather than the tribal aspect of it, it was very much about self-discovery and about learning about the world around you, which is sort of a little bit at odds with the larger kind of like war picture that the story's about.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool, and and like he kind of states that in a way in the very first sentence in the whole thing. He says that when he was returned to his cell, so that gives you an idea
Mhm.
that they're in this kind of confined space. We shared, um, and it says he retained nothing except his knowledge of what he calls shinte, I think. That's his form or whatever, his martial arts practice. So retaining nothing but knowledge is kind of key there.
Yeah,
Like knowledge is really what is going to get you through your crisis rather than brute force or just memorization of a form or something like that. It's actually knowledge that's important, and so right away he points that out, and I think that's pretty key to the rest of the story as it goes on.
yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
That
And it's immediately contrasted by he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know who these people are,
yeah,
and so I just like that contrast too.
yeah. I love the sense of honor that they all have, that like jumping way ahead to the end, but when they know that the the king and the white mages are, they've already shown that they are willing to break a promise to get to what they want. So they go to appeal to the sense of honor to the martial artist, and tell him the the truth, so that he can make a decision, that they trust his judgment based on this business of honor that they have, that they all have, which is kind of yeah, that bit was quite interesting to me too. uh just that you'd think that the people who are likely to kill someone in a fight would have less honor, the but it's actually the other, well, not exactly the other way around, but that is the most important thing to them in all of what they do. So
Hmm.
mm,
Yeah, and honor is what it contributes to why he called it the fatal arts. That
right.
sense of honor in and of itself could possibly make it fatal, because you're not there's no underlying subterfuge or trickery that's something other than using that honor as
Mm,
part of their mode of existence, as part of their training and their what do they call it, ka, like QA, I think it was
yeah,
called.
mhm.
yeah, yeah.
And interesting because I know that some people call it key in other forms like ki,
Mm.
but he uses QA instead.
Oh.
But
Copyright.
that was yeah, right, maybe. uh yeah, that's it's interesting, and I love and I love all his little interesting little character bits we get as it goes along, because you're not you're fed information slowly as the story progresses.
That's
You
right.
get these little things like he says her defeat predated mine, and it makes you wonder what does that mean, because that's only like on the third page or so. And slowly things get revealed as we move along about each of these characters in their situation. Slowly things slowly get revealed about the situations, and like you said, Chris, it makes you want to turn the page faster to
Does.
find out more.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's definitely a story where we know exactly as much as the protagonists within the story. The things that we want to find out on a page by page basis are the things that they want to find out, and the idea that there's a larger overarching kind of theme story event isn't revealed until the end. Whereas many other stories we are kind of watching events play out, but we know that it's part of a bigger plan or a bigger war or other than that. But in our case, it's very much who is the other guy? Why are they being held captive? Are they ever going to get let go? Are they going to die here? And all of that kind of stuff. And then I think it's interesting that both in this story and obviously in the Wars of Light and Shadow, with Johnny and Stephen Donaldson are sort of playing and they're interested in this kind of flipping of the script of light and shadow, black and white, and in both cases, still presenting the aspects of black magic or the aspects of shadow as they are, and not kind of just making different names, but actually turn it around to good and bad. Because this one is essentially about necromancy in some ways when he brings them back to life, and the necromancy is presented as somebody that's meticulous and careful and want to be true and representative rather than necessarily bringing dead back to life, which is inherently bad. But he uses that aspect, I think, in a really clever and interesting way. That when the explanation of it is an Argoin, isn't it? You call the black,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Are
the
going. Yeah.
guy Argoin. He's kind of explaining what he's going. And you go, oh, that's an interesting perspective. And again, it's often kind of in a spiritual sense rather than necessarily anything else that he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how it's not necessarily, like you said, he flips the script on the black magic aspect of it, but not by making it a nice thing or a virtuous or valorous thing. It's still kind of creepy that he's doing this to these people, and um he like, yes, I'm bringing you back from the dead, and it could have been just left there, but he's like, I'm also being very careful about how I bring you back, because if I give you all your memories, then bad things will happen, and I have to be very. He like explains how meticulous of a process it is to do it, and how careful he's being to not destroy these people uh, as he's doing it. But it's still kind of selfish reason why he's doing it. So it's definitely a huge gray area there.
Yeah. There's also the conversation between him and the white mages, I guess, where they're like, we just can't allow you to exist because of what you can do. And he says, but I've never used it for evil. You can just let me be unless, as long as I stay this way. Meanwhile, the white mages, with all their righteousness about the fact that they only do the good kind of magic, are willing to kill and destroy a whole bunch of people. That is also very reminiscent of Wars of Light and Shadow. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, I like that tension too. That you have to look deeper, and that's why I love the what did we say his name was, Asper's unwillingness to just believe what he's being told without more investigation. And I think that's particularly relevant now. Maybe it has always been relevant, but that uh, that you have to look more than skin deep, like look past the headline, look past just the thing that might infuriate you and make your blood boil. Stop and think about it some more, and maybe you'll come up with a different answer.
Yeah. On that note, Vasha, one of his best lines was, "They're so pure that they're prepared to see the whole kingdom laid waste to prove it, as if right and wrong have anything to do with war."
Yeah,
And
that's
I
brilliant.
like that line. That was great.
Yes.
And it's a good kind of example. Again, fantasy I think does this kind of very well. Is that obliteration or wiping out people to have soul power is often not the best thing for the world, because actually as soon as people have soul power, then it corrupts them. That's kind of often the thing here. But people are so hell bent on proving that, and actually you see the subterfuge happen towards the end of the story, and that's going against the code, and the honor is the real evil within that society, really, as opposed to kind of which side of the magic or whatever you're falling on, white or black. Even though he was black magic, it was very much, but he held his honor and held his code, and therefore he shall be lippy.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. I also liked that we, like you were mentioning earlier, we don't get too much about the characters, not their backgrounds either, but we start to root for them almost immediately. I think there's the puzzle aspect of it, of course, about like what's going on. He's the man who's just returned, has been through an ordeal clearly, and these two are trying to figure out how to help him. And we get information that they've potentially been through a similar ordeal too before. And 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 like, just start from that starting point, we don't get too much more information over the course of the story, but we start to like want them to succeed in whatever it is, even though we have maybe less information than they do about what it is they are fighting for. We just want them to get out of there alive, I guess. That's what we want for them. And it was so easy to get attached to them and
Yeah.
want them to succeed.
Yeah, you're right. And they have and it's kind of funny because they don't um like they don't necessarily like that. They seem like they're not like these like super good virtuous characters that you think um are going to be paragons in the world or something like that. They
Mhm.
seem like they have their their they have their balance, I guess. He mentions that he by nature he always enjoyed the proximity of disasters as long as it befell somebody else. And that was like a
Mhm.
little character insight into him. And you're like, okay, and he's telling how he has this ability to normally circumvent any traps or doors and all that stuff. And those aren't skills that, you think somebody would have for the betterment of society or anything like that. They
Mm.
seem like very selfish skills, all told.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like Vasha said, you're rooting for this guy because you instinctively don't want to see somebody trapped in that kind of situation, and you want to figure out the mystery with him. So I thought it was very clever that we're still given all these little things about each of the characters that aren't exactly the best traits in the world as
Mm.
as a person, but still very relatable all nonetheless.
And the two characters, and you can add the third one in, are sort of an uneasy alliance, if that makes sense. They
Right.
are they're not kind of friends by nature. They are kind of friends by circumstance, if you know what I mean, or allies by circumstance, as they trying to work out how to get out of this or what the major plan is together. But they're of different sects, different kind of persuasions, and have their very own beliefs about it. And there is just a couple of moments of tension where Isla says, "No, this is what's going on. You must do what I say at this point," and Asper
Yep.
resists, and there is that little bit of conflict there. But it just creates that kind of question for the reader, going, "Well, who is right? What is correct here? Surely the killing stroke does exist, or does it not?" We get evidence to kind of suggest otherwise, etc. And again, the fact that it was the guy who doesn't believe in the killing stroke that actually is going to succumb to the killing stroke, he doesn't even understand it completely himself. he needs other people to kind of make sure spirit is kind of held up and not defeated by the overwhelming force. So I think that was a very poetic kind of end to the story
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of self contradiction that has to be overcome in order for these characters to overcome the problem that they're in. And that was one of the things he noticed, that when they were arguing about, their different the different philosophies, that he at one point he she was silent as she considered the contradiction of her beliefs, and those contradictions of belief came out in all three characters, I think,
Yeah,
at one point or another, and they had to try to just deal with that and think through that and overcome that that singular, um that binary mode of belief that it has to be this or that, and they had to have more of a gray area and search for their contradictions and overcome those in order to actually help one another and help the black necromancer, um, also overcome, because they had to overcome their contradictory beliefs about him, because they hate him at first,
yeah,
you know, for what he did to them, and you don't blame them for hating him, you
absolutely.
know.
Yeah,
That's not coming from a place of bigotry. That's just you. You brought us here. You stole us out of our beds.
Yeah,
And then you kept killing us until over and over again until we're traumatized by it.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So they have all the reason in the world to just kill
Yeah.
this guy when they finally encounter him, and
Yeah.
it says something about the necromancer's desperate straits that he finally let them in a position to kill him.
Mm,
mhm,
Uh, you know, that was like,
yeah.
okay, wow.
I love that scene where they just generally yell at the wall and say, you have to show us what he's doing if you want us to help him.
mhm.
And then immediately, like 2 seconds later, they're watching the fight. I thought that was brilliant. Like that does so much to show again the desperation, like you said, of this necromancer. And I also like the current, like the running thread of despair is the killing stroke. Despair is what will get this guy,
Mhm.
even if like
Yeah,
the fighting killing stroke doesn't exist. The despair is what like it kills you slowly and sort of eats away at you, which I thought
yeah,
was another brilliant idea that was explored.
yeah. No, no,
Definitely.
I have that underlined right in here.
Yeah.
It says, when it did not sow confusion, anger bred force, grief nurtured despair, and the harvest of despair was death. And I was like, oh, that was a great line.
Yeah.
So you're right on. You're right on target there, Varsha, with
Yeah.
that observation.
And I think it's interesting that all of these characters have died already. So actually, they have experienced death, although the only memory they have is of the knowledge. But it's in the facing of death that despair happens, or the finality of that, rather than actually the act of death, which I think's interesting in its own right.
Right. That was interesting too, right? It's not the guy knows that he's going to come back in some form. Maybe the loss of memory has something to do with it,
Yeah.
but but and he doesn't actively feel it. I think he's just getting more and more exhausted, which maybe is leading to the grief and despair too. But it that is also, I guess, you could read that as a parallel for like, even though you know you can get out of a really difficult circumstance, just knowing that you have to face it again, that can really do a lot of damage. And which was interesting, I thought. Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking about that too, because they know they can come back. So why is the idea of facing death bringing despair? But maybe it's a discussion of something else altogether. That just I the n- the need to face that trauma again, it sucks the energy out of you.
Yeah. Well, I think that ties into the fact that it's this guy who's bringing them back. this necromancer.
Mm.
So if he loses and they
Ooh.
die, they're dead for good. You
Mm.
know, so there is that had to be in the back of their minds at some
Mm.
point.
Mhm.
You know, so like yeah, they're coming back and they've faced death before, but it's only at through the auspices of this one guy's power that they have, and any other situation, that's it. It's over. You know.
Mm.
So it's yes, it's complicated.
Yeah, and I wonder if that also plays into the reason that he doesn't restore all their memories, because again, that personal growth and understanding doesn't happen if they aren't afraid of death. You know, if they have the memory that actually, oh, I died, I have the memory of my death, but that was okay. It was only a fleeting pain. You know, the whole symbolism and growth and learning at the end of the story would not have happened if he hadn't stripped away all those memories and kind of, forced them to deal with their mortality.
Yeah, I have a feeling that I think the point was that the memories would cause more despair
Mm,
and would um, inhibit his mission.
yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, and I love that the young master when he says he kind of admits that his people, the Shinte, are indeed fools to challenge the Narishika, because he says my art is as false as any,
Yeah, yeah.
and he comes to that realization and towards the end, and that's what it's that contradiction in the arts, and having that just that realization that focusing too much on one art can be detrimental and false, and that he overcomes that by dealing with that contradiction. The whole story is about that. It's just so cool.
I mean, it's a sort of parable for a lot of people believing certain dictates or kind of whatever it is, but not understanding why or understanding how. If you know what I
Right.
mean, they just get brought up in a certain way and they believe, oh, this is true. Why? It just is, And I think you see an awful lot of that in modern, religions or otherwise, as the teachings of how all that happened kind of doesn't get infused as much as just the message.
Yeah, that's right. And that even is what helps save the situation, because um oh, I forget her name. Isla?
I like,
Isla, right? When she calls out to him and reminds him of his philosophy, because he was going to die and lose,
indeed.
and it was her overcoming her own contradiction with her philosophy to call out his philosophy to him that allowed that to happen.
Yeah, beautiful moment.
Yeah, very cool. And once again, I I loved how smooth and easy it read. It was just like
Yeah.
it really flew by and was like just so enjoyable, even with all that little those little that those bits of philosophy and those times where you could actually pause and think about the contradiction that's going on, but it's still just like I flew through it,
Yeah. But a lot of the thinking happens on the page as well. It isn't like other stories where you plant an idea and we as the reader have to stop and ponder it and not continue with the story. Like a lot of the thinking the characters do out loud on the page, if that makes sense, and kind of thinking about, oh, that can't be true because we believe that, and the ridiculousness of the idea that they're not being a killing stroke because it's a physical act and physical acts are true, you know what I mean, in physics, but actually the exploration of that all happens
Mhm.
as events kind of go on. So it does kind of propel you through rather than kind of make you stop and pause like some other books will do with their
Yeah, yeah.
philosophical things.
But it happens in a natural
Yes,
debate
it does.
type thing between the
It does.
characters, because they're using that back and forth and discussion about their different philosophies as a means to overcome the problem in the puzzle that they're in. And so it feels so natural, and I think that's why it reads so quickly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep, I second, no, third that bit about how quickly it reads. I flew through it too, and yeah, and it's surprising in retrospect, given
Mhm.
how much it has to make you think, and it's pretty, and I mean dense, but I don't mean it in the way that you might use it for like, in the sense of like every sentence carries weight, but and could mean more than one thing, but it's still like you're still able to fly through it. And also, like, I guess the meaning comes later. It's not that you need to stop and consider each bit as you go. It
Hmm.
builds and sort of snowballs into like the conclusion, which yeah, it really worked for me. The story, this collection is really working for me, making me want to read more Donaldson for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and and I think it's a testament to his skill as a storyteller that I'm sure he must have, because I know through talking with Stephen Donaldson that he has a background with martial arts, and he has practiced martial arts in his past, and
Right.
it you so you know he has these ideas swirling around his head about these little philosophies of martial arts, and some of these little statements and stuff like that that you can make, little like nuggets of wisdom and what have you. And it and it really is a testament to his skill that it's not, because it could be quite cheesy to sit there and throw these nuggets of wisdom on a page in a
Yeah.
story in the hands of a lesser writer. It could just come across as pedantic or what have you. But but he does it with such skill that it feels natural to the story. It feels like it belongs, and really becomes a part of the characters and who they are. And I think a lesser writer wouldn't have pulled it off so easily, and would have made it kind of like, ooh, a
Mhm.
little cringy or something, but it was just so nicely done here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent idea, extremely well handled.
yeah. Excellent execution, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
That.
And not by a killing stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, any final thoughts you have there, folks?
No. Just Agent Fancy Thinker for Donaldson is in full effect. This is a very effective way of introducing and getting into his writing, Jared. I'm very much enjoying it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually, this is, I think, a great introduction to some of his writing.
Yeah.
Um, and some of these, like this story, you didn't quite need the dictionary, like, in some of his other stories, you might. Some of the Covenant stuff, you might need a dictionary every once in a while,
Mhm.
but this one definitely not. Uh, Makes it no less of a skillful story, no less of a really nice prose, but it is a great introduction to his writing overall in this collection. I actually have introduced other people to him through this collection as well, and
Yes.
so I hope hopefully we'll keep going.
Yes. Would you
Nice.
say his other writing, like the novels, for instance, they are as easy to read? Like, do they flow? Like, apart from the maybe more difficult vocabulary, does it also read as easily, or does it read differently than this?
I think so. I think this is a good introduction to get used to his writing style, and I think you will like. I think the Covenant stuff you would fly through the first definitely the first three,
Okay.
and then after that he gets a bit more into psychological insight and stuff like that, and
Mm.
so he uses basically bigger words, but but um but by that time, you'll be fully into it. So I think you guys especially would have no problem, but um, but I think the newer reader to Donaldson's works would this is the best way to ease into it. And then it would be a gradual
Mm,
acceptance of his writing style, and it's some of the best stuff I've ever read. So it's really good.
nice. Yeah,
Um,
because
Excellent.
this is very reminiscent, not the style, not the writing style, but my reaction to the stories is very reminiscent of how I feel with Erickson and Guy Gabriel Gay. So yeah, I'm very eager to read more of his work. So
Cool.
and we shall, because next month we'll be reading The Kings of Tarshish, Tarshish, shall bring gifts. That's the next story in this collection. This one is going to be quite a bit shorter,
mm,
um, only about 40 pages. But
okay.
so that'll be the next story we do for the next episode of Side Hustle,
Nice.
right?
Short
Short
fiction side
fiction,
has
side hustle. Yeah, there we go.
side fiction works too. This
Side fiction,
you,
short
you
hustle. Yeah.
you need to be sold on this collection. There is a story coming up called "The Woman Who Loved Pigs."
Right.
Yes, there is.
it's
Yeah.
it's a um it's a crossover with Cordwainer Smith, as it turns out. Yeah. Love of
Oh
animals,
boy,
rats,
cats and dragons.
dragons,
All
everything.
right,
Yeah.
and pigs, cats, dragons, and pigs. Oh my.
Yes, that's a good story title.
Oh boy. All
All
right.
right.
So once again, you can find Varsha at Reading by the Rainy Mountain YouTube channel and Chris at Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel, and you can find us on the Page Chewing forums as well, and the podcast Speculative Speculations. And so, with all that said, everybody be good to each other, and thank you. Bye bye.